In one of the oldest stories we have on record in the book of Genesis, toward the tail end, we meet a guy named Joseph. And Joseph had a rough life growing up, but through a series of events that God orchestrated and saw, Joseph actually became the number 2 most powerful man in all of Egypt. So much so that after some time, he invited his entire family, his 11 brothers and his father and his sisters, all to come and join him in Egypt. And they can live in the land and under his rule and under his protection. And what we see in the story is that this family for the next 300 years lived in the land of Egypt. And they grew so much so that a pharaoh at that time, who had no recollection of Joseph because they didn't write down their history, began to be afraid of what they called the Israelite people, because they were so numerous that if they were to go to another nation nearby, then they would do what most nations did back then. They would simply take them over. And so Pharaoh did exactly what most tyrants do and what most people do, is he oppressed others who were nothing like him. And so for the next 400 years, the Israelites were enslaved, and they did his bidding and his building and his will. And these Israelites knew that there was a God who looked after them, the God of their forefathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And they prayed and prayed and prayed for 400 years as they were being oppressed and enslaved. And then eventually, after those 400 years, there came a point in time when God could not bear it any longer. And so he chose a man named Moses to lead the Israelite people out of the bondage of slavery from the Egyptians and into the promised land. And he told Moses to go to Pharaoh with a simple command and demand. He says, "Pharaoh, let my people go." But as you've probably read the story and you probably know, Pharaoh didn't do that. And so God told Moses to go to the Nile. And the Nile at this point in time was the largest water source in all of Egypt. And he told Moses to place his staff in the Nile. And when he did that, the water, it turned into blood. And even in this miraculous God Almighty act, Pharaoh looked at it and he hardened his heart, because he could not and he would not let the Israelites go. And so what ended up happening was a series of 8 different plagues that God used to try to pressure Pharaoh's hand into releasing the Israelites. He would send frogs to cover the entire ground. He sent locusts to eat the crops. He sent sickness on the livestock and gnats everywhere, thunderstorm and hailstorms. And he would send boils to cover the skin and itchiness. And yet Pharaoh still wouldn't relent. And so God finally went to Moses and he said, "I'm going to send one more, and this is going to be the one that's going to break Pharaoh's back. This is going to be the one that eventually will lead my people out of Egypt." So God said, "I am going to send my angel, and this angel is going to sweep through the land of Egypt, and it's going to kill the firstborn child of every Israelite and Egyptian in majesty alike." Except for, he told Moses, he told him to go to the Israelites. And here's what the Israelites were to do if they wanted to escape this plague. They were to go and they look for a spotless lamb and watch it for 4 days. And after, once they see this spotless lamb, they're to sacrifice this lamb and use its blood and put it over the door frame of your house. And during this time, you were to have unleavened bread and roasted lamb and certain herbs. In fact, you're going to make it a celebration, because at this moment in time, God is putting a moment in the history of Israel that from this day forward, they're going to celebrate the Passover, that when they have this blood over the doorframe, that the angel of God will pass over the Israelites, giving them mercy and grace. So on the day that God said, the angel of the Lord came, and the Israelites put the blood, but the Egyptians didn't. And what happened is exactly what God said would happen. Pharaoh ended up letting the Israelites go after 400 years, and Moses took them into the promised land. So God decreed that for generations to come, year after year, they're going to celebrate the time that God passed over the Israelites in Egypt and freeing them from the bondage of slavery. And year after year, whether there was good kings in Israel or kings that did evil in the eyes of the Lord, whether there was civil war or people trying to take over the land from the Byzantine nation and the Babylonian Empire and the rise of the Romans that took over the land of Egypt, you see, it didn't matter, because every single year the Jewish people celebrated Passover. It was unchanging, unmoving, unrelenting. This is God-ordained moment that they're to celebrate for the rest of their life. You don't change the Passover. And it's interesting because, Jesus, he ended up coming to this earth, and God in a body came down, and as a Jewish person, they would celebrate the Passover. In fact, you read in Luke that they forgot Jesus during the festival of the Passover. They left him in the temple. And Jesus, all the time throughout his ministry, he would go and he would open blind eyes and heal deaf ears, and he would heal the lame and the sick and raise people from the dead. And in fact, he would say that he was God's Messiah coming down to this earth to free people, not from the slavery of the Egyptians, but rather from the bondage of sin. You see, he would say things like, I am the resurrection and the life, that I am the good shepherd, I am the gate, that I am the only way to the Father. And he was making statements that only God can make, because Jesus, well, he's God. And he would celebrate the Passover just like any good Jew. And in fact, the religious leaders, they really didn't like Jesus at all. They thought what he was teaching and what he was saying was against what God decreed. And in fact, they had a plot to kill Jesus, and they even had Judas betray Jesus. But one thing I find interesting is Jesus said that they don't take my life from me, I freely give it to you. And so on the night that he is to be sacrificed, as if God wrote the story, they're sitting down, all of his disciples, in an upper room for Passover. And once again, they're going to celebrate after 1,500 years the fact that God saved them from Egypt. And as Jesus stood up, no doubt his disciples thought that he was just going to retell the story of God's faithfulness and sovereignty and grace and mercy, and how God got them out of Egypt. And no doubt that they were going to sing songs and sing hymns and have good food and do all those things. But Jesus does something that nobody expected. You see, he picked up the unleavened bread, and instead of talking about the goodness of God in the midst of Egypt, he said, "This is my body, which is broken for you." And he's about to redefine and change the entire Passover in and of itself, something that for 1,500 years they did year in and year out. Only God can change something like that. But then Jesus continues, and he picks up his wine and he says, "This is my blood, which is poured out for the forgiveness of your sin." And no doubt his disciples are wondering, what in the world is happening? Jesus is changing everything. And it should be no shock, because Jesus changed everything when he was here on this earth. You see, he changed the way that we view God, and he changed the way that people can relate to God. No longer is God this almighty in the sky, but yes, he is, but he's also your heavenly Father. He changed the way that we view the cross. And the cross is no longer an instrument of torture. It's rather a beacon of hope. And he changed what we thought is a grave of an ending into a resurrection. Jesus changes everything. And so there's no reason to believe that he couldn't change the Passover. And there's no reason to believe that he can't change anything and everything in you.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us the day after Christmas at this holiday hangover, our church service online. We thought that we would just do a little twist, continue with this twist that we're doing, and we wanted to be able to interact together as a staff. You don't always get to hear from all of us, and you don't always get to see us the way that we like to interact as a family, our other family. So we're going to interact with the things that Cam's already shared with us a little bit, and ask some questions and contemplate those questions together. So we haven't rehearsed this. We know what the questions are, but that's about it. So we don't know what Autumn might say next. So,
watch out.
So here's our first question, talking about change and holding on to things. First question is, why do you think people hold onto things that are bad for them? It's life, so we're okay. This is how we all interact. So, need to go take your meds, Clarice? Is that what that's about? Because it's going to help your interactions if you take your meds. All right, first question. Why do you think people hold on to things that they know are bad for them?
Because it's comfortable.
Yeah, comfort
It's
zone.
what you're used to, even if it's bad
Right.
for you.
Yeah, it's easier to hold on to it than to let it
You-
go. That takes intentionality, hard work.
You already know how to do it, handle it. things like
So
that.
it's easier. What was the other thing?
Well, change
Comfortable.
is difficult.
It's comfortable.
Mhm.
Change is very difficult for people at times.
Even when we know it's bad for us. There's a analogy I used to use in a training, that a pigsty analogy, that pigs really like their sties because it's the surroundings that they have around them. It's all predictable. They know where the edge is. People bring them stuff to eat, so it's self-sustaining, and they've gotten used to how bad it smells. So why change it? Why change it? Yeah.
Living in your stink.
When you think about some of that, then, if you think about when something was hard for you to change in your own life, that you knew you should, what helped you make that change? What helped you out of the pigsty, if we use that analogy? When did it get stinky enough? When did you get uncomfortable enough? What was the thing that you said, this is enough? You don't even have to share specifics if you don't want to, but just what was it?
I would say for me, getting away from church and then having to go back in it, or not having to, but having a child change things. And I realized it's not just my soul that I'm affecting.
All right. So it sets up responsibility and legacy. Okay.
And it was okay that I was doing that to myself, but once I had a child, it made a big difference. I wanted him to know Jesus and God.
And you probably knew you couldn't do it on your own.
Right.
But you couldn't teach him all the things you needed to be in a community
Right.
and an environment to
Right.
help you with that.
Some more. But other things when you think about the thing that caused you to change, the impetus that made you change, and then we can add Jesus to it. What then reliance, help, assistance did Jesus have to provide, or was like you knew you needed because you couldn't do it on your own?
I think I've shared this before. You guys know this. I've shared it with the church as well. But I'm a man of routine. That's something that I'm a proponent of that. I have strict deadlines that I give myself. For the day or the week. Stuff like that. And I was realizing, this is probably late summer this past year. But I was realizing I wasn't allotting enough time for people. I was allotting enough time. I was allotting enough time for my workflow, but I wasn't allowing enough time for Jesus and allowing space and creating space for Him, for people in my life. And so I was getting boxed into my own routine. And something that helped me realize that was my wife. Actually, she shared with me that sometimes I dive too deep into work, and other times I dive too deep into people. And she's like, you have to realize which one is which, and how to go between the two, and how to stay in the middle there.
That's
and so
a good one.
she had shared that with me, and then I was neglecting friendships, just because I had stuff to get done, and so it was like it's the wrong way to do it, but having my eyes opened by my lovely wife.
Way to go, Deidre. Good job.
Wives are good.
Our wives are always the better half.
So it's just little things like that. He'll open your eyes in different ways. But
Have you been able to balance it a little bit better now that you're aware of it?
it's getting better, especially I was this Christmas season has been a lot easier because I've had people in my life that can help me through different things that we're getting done in the Christmas season. It's really busy, so I've had people that can help me with different things, so I don't have to dive so deep into this on my own. I can delegate to different people, and I can help accomplish what they're doing. They can help me, and so it's been easier with a team type environment. It's been an easier time, especially at Christmas. It's chaos for everybody, but it's been easier realizing where you misstep and where you need help, and then people can step into your life and help you through that.
And asking for help can be hard, so that's really a
absolutely.
good thing to do.
Absolutely.
And saying yes to your wife is always a good thing. You're right.
Yes.
You're right. I was thinking of I've shared this too before, and I think it's new to you because this is your first Christmas with us. I was giving you a forewarning of what can happen to me at Christmas time. I learned a few years ago that I would get this mild Christmas depression at Christmas time. That and it was all linked, as in everything that I share, linked to my troubled childhood and upbringing. That I would have certain expectations that Christmas would be letting me down, And so I would get this low-grade depression, and then I would start alienating myself from people and expect to be disappointed, therefore withdraw into my own self. And for a lot of years, it was great for Tina and I to do that. It was easy, not great, easy for us to do it because it was just us. Because we had family up in Idaho that we wouldn't always be with, and the other family that I'm never with. But I would, the proactive thing that I needed help with Jesus about was I had to identify that it was actually happening earlier than reacting to it. Does that make sense? So I was anticipating it. This year it came earlier, I think because my dad died this year and stuff. I anticipated, I was proactive enough with the lens that Jesus was providing me that watch out for yourself this year, because you get all into yourself and into getting disappointed with people at Christmas times. And I started early this year. So if I don't have the right lens, if Jesus doesn't help me believe the best in people, I get disappointed at Christmas time.
I kind of went through the same thing after my divorce, because we were married 22 years, and it was very difficult to be alone. So it would start at Thanksgiving,
Okay.
you know, right when the holidays would start,
Yeah.
and then it would go through New Year's. You know, it was just that whole holiday season that, you know, being by yourself alone when you've been with someone
Right.
for 20
Yeah.
plus years, and doing it on your own, because I have a very large family, as y'all know, I have lots and lots of grandkids. But I had to remind myself that I was not what Christmas was about. It was
Right.
Jesus is what Christmas is about.
Right.
And so as I went to God with that and focused on the true meaning of Christmas, it brought me through it. And now it's my favorite time of year.
Mm.
Always has been, but it was difficult for many years.
Anyone else?
One of the things I'm working on, it's not something that's changed yet. I can get angry pretty easily, especially if things aren't. I don't get angry necessarily at, you know, people driving and cutting me off or things like that. You know, I've got a church sticker on the back of my car, so I really can't cut them off or, you know, do some colorful.
Is it Journey Church or that
Maybe.
other church? Because that other church is okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And let's get another church's sticker on
Right,
the car
yeah.
some way. I think
It's constant swear all you want with that sticker.
Right.
you know, I can't really give them sign language on what you're saying. No, I get more angry when things aren't done the way I would do them.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and then that hinders a lot of, like for instance, like my kids. I love Lily, Atticus, and Dean. And I ask them to do stuff, and I expect them to do it in like an adult way, not a 6-year-old way. And so it's like, why won't you just, you know, so my wife is always like, man, you've just been getting angry a lot. Like, because they're not listening. But they're not doing it, right? And so in the same way as at work, you know, working for the church or doing anything, if it's not done the way that I would expect it, or the way that I think it should be done, or the way I would do it, it's like, well, what the heck? And so that stops me from being able then to empower people to use their gifts for the works of service. And so, you know, there's somebody, Craig Rochelle is a pastor, he says, you can have control, you can have growth, you can't have both. And I was like, huh, thanks, Craig. And so that's one thing I'm working on and trying to change inside of me, is that kind of anger that I get. Because I can go from 0 to red real quick, and it's not fun for anyone around. So those are things that I'm trying to work on, that I'm still battling with all the time, is not getting so angry with myself or with other people or with my kids or Carly or anything like that.
With age comes patience.
So I tell my kids all the time that, you know, patience is waiting without complaining.
My parents used to tell me patience
good.
is golden. Earn the gold before you
Yeah.
finish.
Oh.
It's interesting.
Anything come to mind for you two?
Well, I was gonna say one thing that I need to work on that I'm kind of trying, but maybe should put more intentionality or effort into it, is asking for help.
Oh,
Because I do struggle. I know
Self-sufficient.
I can
or
do a lot on my
independent.
own, and
Okay.
so sometimes I let that go too far and do it all on my own, and I should stop and ask for more help here and there. And I know people are willing. I just am like, oh, I can just do it. So I just I don't burden anyone else
Right.
with things that I know I can do on my own. But I should, because some people want that burden. They want to help.
Right.
So that's something I know I need to focus and work on a little bit more. Yeah. And maybe even, I have really great patience for kids of any age,
Even like this age?
No, I have very little patience for grown-ups. Yeah. And I think it's because, like you kind of said,
Because they should be able to do
the way
better.
I think, and
Right.
Oh,
Just
And
do it the way I do it.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You're an adult after all.
control freaks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably a part of it.
Yeah, no, I went through that because I am an accountant. And very early in my career, it was very, very difficult to allow someone to do anything. If I had a
Yeah.
spreadsheet I wanted, it was like in my head, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to go, okay, here's A, here's B, here's C. And I finally had to learn that it just stressed me out too much to be doing that. I used to go, here's A, and then here's Z, and this is where you need to be. How you get
Right.
there,
You don't care.
I don't really care.
Yeah.
When you have an issue or you can't get there, let me know, I'll help you get there. But it was really hard to give it up.
It's probably very freeing when you did get
It
it.
is very freeing, but it was very, very difficult to give up that control, of what your brain is thinking.
Excellent segue,
Yeah.
Clarice.
Yeah.
Because that's the last question. Is kind of an imagination question. If you could imagine this next year, as we live in community together, pursue Christ, go to the Bible as our grid for living, and you reallocate yourself so this thing that we're working on, the energy that we put all towards that could be reallocated towards some other things. Imagine what your life could be like. It's kind of a weird question.
If you're
But
to
what-
change, imagine what your life.
Yeah, what could you look forward to next year at this time if we were asking the same question, given the answer you just gave? What could be different in your life, in the lives of your kids, or in your life? What do you think?
I think learning just balance between home, work, things like that, because I feel like either I'm running ragged over here, or I'm running ragged over here, and I need to figure out, because I feel like then, things aren't happening at work the way I want them, things aren't happening at home the way
Kind
I
of
want
like
them.
this morning when you
Yes.
actually
What-
said, is the video going to be a video or audio?
Right, because I'm still in my
Video,
pajamas, right?
You're going to be on camera.
It was one of those days. And it was
Because
like,
you
I
were
was
reaching your
panicking.
capacity.
Yeah, I was reaching my
It was
capacity.
one of
I
those
was
hard mornings.
panicking, and Carla called me and prayed for me, and within minutes I felt peace. I was able to get out of my jammies.
I mean, in all fairness, Autumn, you've gone to church. And
I know.
So what's the big deal? A wedding after that too. Another story for another time.
Right. So.
Okay, some more balance.
Balance,
Okay, that's a good
yeah.
answer. Something as staff particularly, we love what we do. We love
Right.
who we do it for, Jesus, and we could really get unbalanced. And even as you were talking about with friends and stuff, it's easy for us to, because it's a noble thing. You guys are worth it, and the church is worth it. And man,
Right.
we like to put it all out there for all of it. But we can get cattywampus then too.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anyone else?
My life would be more peaceful.
Yeah, that's
Amen.
what I was gonna
Wouldn't that
say.
be some
Be
rest?
calmer.
You know?
I want to be so angry all the time. It's like the Hulk, man. It's like, oh, it's my secret. I'm always angry.
That's how
It's like,
there's a lot of energy in that Hulk stuff.
It's like I run at like a 70% angry half the time.
But you have little ones at home, so
Yes.
you need space for yourself.
Yes.
That helps with that.
Peace, that's a real big answer. That's a good one. I think about that. I shared a couple weeks ago about my little breathing or two, and things without brains, because that's safer, because they don't have to forgive you for misbehaving because the rocks or cups of coffee. So I think about that peace too. I'd love to have more. And when I think about peace, I like to think about biblical peace, the shalom, or the completeness and perfection that God, alignment with God provides.
Right.
That's just that shalom. Even the word
You
shalom.
can
it's
feel it
just,
when you just say it.
yeah, I want
You
that.
feel that peace,
I
yeah.
want that for me, for you guys, for my wife, for our church. Peace it's a good goal.
Right.
Peace from God. Any other thoughts? We did good. We're sharing some good stuff.
I thought the message was great.
Yeah. Well, the guy who brings it. No. Let's segue out of that. So we're going to go back to Cam now. He's going to share some more thoughts. We hope that watching us interact with each other inspires you to interact with your family, with your kids, to ask deep, important questions like this, because God's up to something in your life. So let's go back to Cam.
So what is it in you that needs to change? What is it in you that you've allowed in your life, maybe for months or years or decades, and you know it shouldn't be there, but you just adopted it as a part of your life because it's been this way for so long that it is always going to be this way? Maybe I was thinking about it, it's an addiction. Right? Maybe it's an alcohol problem that you have, and you've made an excuse because it's just a part of your life for so long, and other people have said things about it, that maybe you drink a little bit too much, or maybe you socially go out a little too often. It changes who you are and your personality, but you just say, well, I just like to drink, or you just say, I'm just been that way my entire life, and so that's just the way it's going to be. And so you hold on to it and you allow it to stay there, and maybe it's a different addiction of some sort, or pornography or gambling, or maybe it's some sort of drug, and it's been in your life for so long that you just think, well, it's just never going to change. In other moments, maybe it's not an addiction, but it could easily be a behavioral issue where you're just so angry all the time at everyone and everything, and it impacts your relationships, and people have to walk on eggshells around you because they're afraid of speaking out of turn or out of sorts, and making sure that you don't get upset and you don't get angry. So it causes division between people. And maybe it's not anger, but it's envy or greed or lust, or maybe it's not even any of those things. Maybe for you it's like a broken relationship that's been in your life, and you need to go ask for forgiveness, but you said, I haven't talked to my sister in 17 years, and I don't even remember what the problem was, but it's just never going to change. It's never going to happen. And after all, whatever it might be, my mom was like that, my dad was like that, my family's like that, and so I'm just going to be like that. Why? Because I'm not going to change, because these things aren't going to change. We're going into a new year of 2022 in just a few days, and I want to ask you, do you want to continually struggle? Do you want to have the daily struggle or the silent struggle? Do you want to constantly feel guilt and shame and separation from people? Do you want to constantly bring that into the next year when you said that you were going to change it last year or the year before that? The one thing I know about Jesus is that Jesus can change anything. And that's just not lip service that we say. And that's just not something that sounds good on a bumper sticker. I have seen it. We see it in the Gospels, as I just said before. We see it in the life change that happens. And so when you say, well, nothing can change, or I can't change, I want to tell you, you need to submit that to Jesus. And I know it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. For some of you, you're going to have to confess sin. You're going to have to ask for forgiveness. You might have to get rid of some relationships. You might have to go to AA or NA, or you might have to actually take responsibility for your own emotional actions. It's not an easy thing, but what I know is this, is that I would rather struggle trying to become the person that Jesus is changing me into than continually struggle with the person that I am. Because Jesus wants to change you, and Jesus can change you. You see, as Jesus followers, we struggle with things all the time. But the process of becoming more like Jesus is the process of change. It's a process of discipleship. It's a process of looking more like Jesus every single day, and no longer just saying, well, that's just the way I am. That's the way I'm always going to be. That's the way that my family is. Well, that's just who I am. And if you don't like it, well, you can leave. Well, that's not the way of Jesus. I don't want you to, and I don't want myself to secretly struggle all the time. I don't want us just to say things are never going to change, because we have a God in heaven who looks down on us and who is willingly and openly and asking you to give whatever you have to Him. And maybe you've done that before, but you haven't invited people around you. Maybe you've said, okay, God, I'm never going to do it again. This is my last time. It won't happen. They're out of my life. I'm going to control myself this time. But then you actually don't have accountability around you or friends around you to help you and guide you and disciple you to become who Jesus wants you to be. You see, change isn't easy. We know that. In fact, it's probably one of the hardest things you can do, but would you rather have a life of regretting that you never gave up these things in your life? Or would you rather have a hard year? Or you could say in 2022 that it was a year of change. It was a year I made no more excuses. It was a year that I submitted to Jesus. Because Jesus can change anything. We see that with the Passover. We see that with the cross. We see that with the grave. And I promise you, we can see it with you too. Because Jesus changes everything.